As I said at the top of the show, we're talking Senate budget today, and joining us is Senator Erica Smith Ingram. Senator Smith Ingram is from, we had northeastern North Carolina on the screen because you're District 3, which represents, I'm going to get the counties in here, Bertie, Chowan, Edgecombe, Hertford, Martin, Northampton, Tyrrell, and Washington counties.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being here today. Now, one of the reasons why I invited you on is, unfortunately, you were caught up in something that got some attention in the news media. Actually, got some national attention in the Washington Post. Right at the end of the budget process, and for our viewers, I want to sort of explain a little bit about how that goes. But we were coming up to the last vote. You had to have a vote in one day, and then they waited until, and then the Senate majority waited until 12:05 in the morning for the second vote, and that's when you and some others started offering some amendments to the budget. Tell me what happened next.
Okay, as my colleagues and I were offering amendments to perfect the budget, several of those amendments included a 2% cost of living adjustment increase for our retirees. We had one that would expand teacher pay so that those with 25 or more years of teaching experience are not left out of the opportunity for their salaries to grow as well for their commitment to public education. I ran an amendment that would expand broadband, particularly to rural, eastern, and western parts of North Carolina. And we know how significant and important broadband is in terms of providing economic opportunities as well as educational opportunities.
Now, those sound like pretty normal amendments to a budget. I mean, now look, you're a Democrat, which means, and Republicans in the Senate have a supermajority, so they're going to pass the budget at some point. But you're going to offer things. You have all these counties that you represent. But then something a little unusual happened. Senator Brent Jackson, and I think we have a picture of Senator Jackson. He's a Republican who represents Duplin, Sampson, and Johnston County. Came back with an amendment that was introduced that said, we've been talking about opioid addiction in caucus, in Republican caucus, and we're going to put an additional $1 million into it to fund some pilot programs. It's an important issue, opioid addiction. And I invited Senator Jackson to come on to talk about the provisions of the amendment, but he did not respond to us. The $1 million was paid for out of some sort of creative changes to the budget that, and I want to get the exact number. Your district lost $316,646, according to my calculations, in funding for cuts to two early college high schools in your district, cuts to a program called Eastern North Carolina STEM, and this one was even more, I don't know, disappointing. At least two of your counties were removed from a program to help teachers' assistants move into teaching jobs. What was your reaction? I mean, did you know what was going on at the time when this was being introduced?
I was working through the amendment stuff. When an amendment is presented and the amendment sponsor starts explaining the amendment, they usually typically give an explanation of what the amendment is going to do and where it's shifting the money from. That was not done in the explanation of this amendment. There was a lot of discussion about opioid and providing another $1 million, but it was not stated that this was taking away educational opportunities for students in Eastern North Carolina. Many of these students who are minority students, high poverty students, but for these opportunities, they would not have access to STEM programming as well as what the cooperative and innovative high schools offer. And I just do need to say something about that. It was actually 6 of my counties were removed from turning TAs into teachers. As you know, it's really hard to recruit educators in many of these school districts, and they have a low supplement. So what this provision would have allowed is for us to grow our own. To turn TAs into teachers is something that we have been working on for over a year and a half. I represent 8 counties. 6 of those 8 counties were added to the pilot. And when they were added to the pilot, typically for an amendment, you mark through the counties that you're taking out, and then you insert those counties that you are adding. That wasn't done. The whole paragraph was edited, and so it listed the new counties without showing in writing that you were eliminating 6 in the hard-to-fill areas.
And look, these are and the things that the counties that were moved. I mean, these are all facts. I mean, this is not my opinion or your opinion. The counties that were removed and targeted for cuts are all represented by Democrats.
All represented by Democrats.
All the counties that were added to the TA to Teacher program and to the opioid pilot programs are all represented by Republican senators. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And one thing that's important to add here, 2 of the counties that removed, Senator Bryant represents Halifax County, I represent Northampton County, but these 2 counties have taken turns with the highest teacher turnover in the state for the last 5 years. And so it was very deliberate to include those so we can solve the problem of filling our teacher vacancies in these counties, but they were removed.
Now, does Senator Jackson or anyone in the Senate Republican leadership either come to you before or after to explain, we had some concerns about these 2 early college high schools in Northampton and Washington County didn't think that they were doing a good job or didn't really think that Eastern North Carolina STEM was a good program. Anything like that?
No, and quite the contrary. The Eastern STEM program has been one of the most successful programs in the state, and Representative Craig Horn also brought that to our attention. He's been a supporter of that. In terms of the Cooperative Innovative High Schools, you know that the legislature has funded those schools for the last 11 years, with the exception of 2016. So since 2016, we were working very in a committed manner to make sure we can provide these opportunities. All of these counties are Tier 1 counties, both Washington and Northampton, and they have the early college program, which is instrumental in making sure students can have the access to an associate's degree when they graduate from high school. They have a degree in one hand, certification in the other hand. They're well on their way
they're great
to
programs.
completing college or moving into the workforce.
So what's next? I mean, what's going to happen? I guess, first of all, do you think that this can be changed either in the House budget or in conference? And also, I guess, worst case scenario, if these things stand, what happens to these 2 high schools? What happens to Eastern North Carolina STEM?
Well, I have full faith and confidence. I have had some courageous conversations with Senate leadership, and I've also spoken to our House leadership. And there is a concerted effort underway as we speak to put those much needed provisions back in the budget so we can do right by children in Eastern North Carolina. Keith, I can tell you, I don't know what happened that night. My parents have a curfew of midnight because they say nothing happens good after 12.
Nothing good happens after midnight, right? I've heard that too.
So when you look at what was done at 3 o'clock, I don't know if it was ego that exacted such retribution for Democrats running amendments to perfect the budget, or I don't know if it was sleep deprivation that would lead to the devastation of opportunities for students. And so I think now that calmer minds are prevailing and there's been a significant outcry of support for restoring these provisions in the budget, that's what gives me the confidence and the optimism that we are going to do what's right by our students.
Well, that's what, I think that's what, as we've often said, so we don't, care whose idea it is, Republican or Democrat, but our focus should be on the children, right, and doing what's best. So it sounds like that's what you're trying to do in terms of sort of working through some of these challenges that may happen. I guess, as sort of a final question, if these aren't restored, what happens to the program?
If they're not restored, the Eastern STEM program, this will be their last summer operating. And it's been a phenomenal program to offer opportunities, and it's just sad that that program will end after this summer and they will not be able to provide opportunities for students without the funding.
Well, thank you for coming on the show and talking about it. After we get through all this, we'll get you back on. We'll talk about how things were adjusted. How about that?
Let's do that.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Thank you. Now, before we go to break, see if you can answer this question. North Carolina's average teacher salary ranking jumped from 41st last year to 35th. True or false, the state's per pupil spending ranking also increased?